Welcome everybody to the Prometheus Prime Show. I'm your host, Prometheus Prime, and today we are going to be responding to a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time video. Back in my Morrowind response to Acerthorn, I mentioned that The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was my very first video game I've ever played. It was my introduction to video games, and I have a personal connection to that game in particular. The channel we will be responding to is Hey Poor Players TV. They made a video that I felt was very unfair to Ocarina of Time. Now when I first started watching this video, I assumed it was going to be a detailed and informative review of the game as a whole. Then I saw how long the video was and I changed my tone very quickly. 7 years ago, Egoraptor made a video that was critical of Ocarina of Time. The video was 30 minutes long and it was well constructed and provided evidence for the criticisms made towards Ocarina of Time. He took the extra time to explain his points and presented them in an entertaining way, so much so that if you didn't agree with him, you at least understood where he was coming from. But of course, how long the video isn't always a deciding factor on whether a video is of quality. If watching Joseph Anderson has taught me anything, it's that making a long video about a subject doesn't always make the video good. It's the accuracy of the arguments that matter. Ocarina of Time fails the test of time. Now, if you are referring to the graphical design, then of course, without a doubt, Ocarina of Time looks like dog shit on a summer sidewalk compared to some games made today. But in terms of everything else like story or gameplay, you'll need a lot of extraordinary evidence to back that claim up. Now, I know what you're thinking. The title says second opinion, which means that this video is just their opinions. That may be the case, but if you have an opinion on something and the reasonings are untrue, that would make the entire statement false. For example, saying The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is bad because it doesn't have fast travel even though it does is an untrue statement. The game can still suck, but your reasonings are untrue. Anyone who knows the truth really shouldn't stand for people misrepresenting the subject matter at hand. And if that person you are responding to cares about the truth, then they really shouldn't get upset when they're called out. Now there's an elephant in the room that I need to address. I'm obviously biased in favor of this game, as it was my very first video game I've ever played, and I love it to pieces. But I will try my best to be as objective as possible. Without further delay, let's get to the video.
This is not a series about games you haven't heard of. This is a series about games everyone has heard of. Games that everyone has an opinion on, regardless of whether they've played them or not. Games whose actual qualities have been buried in a narrative, whether good or bad. Games that everyone always makes the exact same comments about. Games that are in desperate need of a second opinion.
I don't really disagree with the premise, I'm just curious about the execution.
Hi everybody, Dr. I. Coleman here with a PhD in Today's episode of Second Opinion wouldn't be possible without the help of two lovely people. The first is Johannes Gutenberg, probably not a real name, who wrote in the comments of a YouTube video that he or she or whoever would like to see a second opinion video on Ocarina of Time. And the second person who made this episode possible is Jay Petriquin, who is the former host of the Hey Poor podcast, a current writer on Hey Poor Player, and someone who I'm happy to call a personal friend. And he's the one who actually wrote this week's episode. So if you have a problem with it, go flame him.
Listen man, I'm just here to inform you when you are wrong. If said flaming ensues because of that, that's just a byproduct of you making a video with bad evidence.
You can do that at Extreme Salsing on Twitter. But before we get to all that unpleasantness, let's give The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time a second opinion. In case you haven't noticed, people tend to like The Legend of Zelda. And no wonder, since the days of the NES, the series and its tunic-bound protagonist have been hacking and slashing through spiders and pigs, scaling mountains, and delving deep into sinister woods. Ocarina of Time is held up as a golden child, a marker of its era, and perhaps one of the most iconic video games ever made.
And for good reason.
That said, it doesn't exactly hold up all that well. Now, don't get me wrong, Ocarina of Time is a good game. Knowing its fans and their usual reactions to statements such as the one just uttered, let's chant it a few more times, shall we? Ocarina of Time is a good game. Ocarina of Time is a good game. Ocarina of Time is a good game.
Okay, that's it. I am so sick and tired of people making videos like this where they feel the need to soften the blow of their critiques to these so-called rabid fans. Is that really even necessary? See, Egoraptor's video on Ocarina of Time got a minimal amount of hate, despite taking such a controversial stance in his video. He didn't feel the need to calm people down before starting his video proper. In fact, he actively mocked those people who wouldn't even try to hear him out before responding to him. The reason for that is he's not trying to convince those crazy people who think Ocarina of Time is absolutely perfect. It's impossible to convince those people of Ocarina of Time's flaws, and he was trying to present his opinion in an entertaining way and treat his audience like adults, so they behave as such. He made sure to express that there was a difference between Ocarina of Time fanboys and fans of Ocarina of Time. Fanboys think their piece of media is perfect and will actively shut down any criticism that is levied towards it, because they have somehow psychologically conflated their personal self-worth to the media that they like. So if you are seemingly attacking their media, you are essentially attacking them. These people are a minority of a minority and shouldn't even be given any actual attention. Fans can listen and agree, as well as disagree. Fans can add their own criticisms and listen to criticism. And most importantly, fans can actually argue back.
Ocarina of Time has the most boring depiction of Hyrule ever made. Oops, I let it slip.
Okay, and here we have our very first criticism. Ocarina of Time has the most boring depiction of Hyrule ever made. Okay, so what am I supposed to do with that exactly? No, seriously, there is no objective measurement to find out what qualifies as boring. So it is unverifiable until we have some qualifiers to know what you find particularly boring about the subject. And even then, you still have to explain why those particular things make Hyrule and Ocarina boring.
As known and venerated as Ocarina of Time is, not everyone grew up playing it. I myself, meaning the one typing these words and not the less handsome person speaking them. Hey!
You said it, dude. Not me.
Didn't get time to fully sink my claws into the game until around 2011. Reasons for this included lacking the right consoles, not having many friends with nostalgia-based game collections, and of course being a filthy millennial. When I finally got around to playing the damn thing, my first reaction wasn't, oh my goodness, look how free and changed and new I feel, but rather a solid, this field is that big, huh? The purpose of today's video isn't to regurgitate the obvious, though. Pointing out that younger generations don't have the same nostalgic context for a game is a worthwhile point, but a self-explanatory and well-documented one already.
It's actually not a worthwhile point, because you can enjoy these games without nostalgia being required. To further elaborate on this point, I will use a point I made back in the past because it is just as relevant here as it was there.
You're not special because you played Morrowind last. You aren't any more or less informed or objective just because you didn't play this game when you were young. And that's going to become more apparent as this video goes on. Now, I agree that nostalgia can alter a person's perspective on the things they criticize. It can make people think the piece of media that they're reviewing is better than it is. However, that blade cuts both ways. Because people can have nostalgic feelings of fondness for a particular franchise, and later find out that it wasn't as great as they remember. Having you be able to see its flaws and having the knowledge and experience from playing it when it was first released, it gives you more perspective on the game and potentially makes you more objective than someone who hasn't played it till later. Someone doing a blind retrospective can be just as susceptible to their biases, from being spoiled by modern controls, enhanced graphics, and current gameplay mechanics. It's really about how you use nostalgia, and it's fine to be nostalgic as long as you aren't completely blinded by it.
Instead, what we want to do is identify the flaws lying within the game, and why perhaps it doesn't stand quite as tall as some of Hyrule's other grand towers. Let's start with the one that's already been spoken. The Hyrule presented in Ocarina of Time is straight up not fun to explore.
Not fun, okay. I can't do anything with that, for the same reason I can't argue with them saying it's boring. Because I personally found it fun. So, here we are.
Goma is eradicated from within the Great Deku Tree's woodsy old intestines, and things are looking promising. It's finally time to get out there and explore Hyrule, and adventurers are met with a circle. A large green circle with a house in the middle, and a few little paths going places.
A large green circle with a house in the middle, with a few little paths going places. That is extremely reductive. I seriously wonder what this person thinks is a fun video game to play, because you can make any game sound terrible with that type of description. In Skyrim, once you escape Helgen proper, you walk out into a large field with a few little paths going places, and the main character is just some guy and the antagonist is a flying lizard that can breathe an element. Seriously, this video is giving me Dashing David flashbacks.
A short version, obviously there's more to the story than that, but I think it's an actual decent story, whereas Fallout New Vegas is just kind of like, who shot me?
Look, let's break this down one by one. Hyrule Field is a field. It is supposed to be green because it is a field. Oh, and what was that last part? Oh right, with a few little paths going places. Yes, you do realize that Hyrule Field is the main hub, and the point of a main hub is to lead into other areas, right? I feel like this is something that should go without saying, but here we are.
The two big counterarguments to this criticism are, one, that Hyrule Field was groundbreaking enough at the time to be seen as stunning, and two, that there was only so much game designers could fit onto a Nintendo 64 game cartridge. There's truth to both statements, too. The first goes without saying, while the second is a fact whose truth is the reason an entire dungeon was cut from the final game, and why the Sage of Light is just kind of hanging out in Seijo space, ready to say hi to Link, instead of waiting to be awakened at the end of a dungeon like all the rest.
I wasn't thinking that, but both are very valid counter-arguments. Makes sense to me.
The criticism to be made of Hyrule Field, though, has more to do with its involvement with the rest of the world, or rather, its complete lack thereof. Hyrule is meant to be read as a land of many cultures, from its noble Hylians to the rock-munching Gorons and reclusive Zoras. There's history to the land, or at least the suggestion of it. There's an entire bit of backstory, wherein it becomes revealed that Impa is the last of a race that fell victim to genocide, for crying out loud. Why then does the Grand Hub area of Hyrule feel so devoid of anything? Put some evidence that the roads have been traveled, maybe have a couple more houses, or a shop where someone is selling trinkets from different places. I don't know what specifically should be there, and now I'm just spitballing. The point is that upon entering Hyrule Field for the first time, you feel as though you're the first person to ever stand there.
Wait just a minute. Didn't you just say
that there was only so much game designers could fit onto a Nintendo 64 game cartridge?
So you just got done talking about how there's so little memory in this game, and made an explanation for why there is no light temple, then without fail asked why there aren't extra houses, shops, or signs of travel in Hyrule Field? You answered your own question, my guy. It's because the game doesn't have the memory required to do so.
It doesn't bear any markers of the place it's supposed to be a part of. It's part of a larger problem I have with the game, where, in general, each area dedicated to a specific race of Hyrule citizens feels completely isolated. Nobody travels anywhere or visits with anybody. There's no sense of communication, really, between any of these places. Not until you, the grand heroes, show up.
You know what's really funny, guys? He travels to Lon Lon Ranch, and a character named Talon actually travels from Lon Lon Ranch to Hyrule Castle, while carrying large crates of milk to make a delivery. Also, his daughter Malin travels from Lon Lon Ranch to Hyrule Castle to find her father because she is worried. The reason why most people don't travel from place to place is because it's dangerous in Hyrule Field. Not everybody is an adventurer like you. There are monsters everywhere, which is another reason why Hyrule Market gates close at night. Even during the day, as Adult Link, those will show up to attack you. And don't get me started on what happens to people when you become an adult. Oh, it's terrible. Gorons have no reason to want to leave their mountain. They love the heat, and they have all the rocks they can eat up there. There aren't that many rocks in Gerudo Valley or Zora's Domain. The same problem with the Zoras. Fish don't do very well on dry land, especially in volcanoes or deserts. There are no fish in these areas for Zoras to eat. The Korkori are just children, and it is dangerous for them to go into Hyrule Field. You took the only sword in the forest, and they are forbidden to leave or allow people in, you being the exception by the Great Deku Tree. I guess that leaves the Gerudos. They are fairly capable warriors, and probably could survive in the Goron and Zora villages, but there's just one teeny tiny problem.
They hate men?
It ends up feeling as though the kingdom of Hyrule is centered around a vast, grassy no-man's land. Come on, man, at least petition for a Starbucks. It also doesn't help that Ocarina's art style has an odd drabness to it.
Let's see, looking up the definition of drab. Well, yes, it is drab in the place that you're showing. It's supposed to be drab because you are inside a cursed tree who has been suffering from this affliction for a long time. But I can also show lots of locations by definition that aren't considered drab.
Everything is made out of stone and rock, and it all starts to feel boring.
Please check your scripts before you release your videos. Stones and rocks are the same thing. The only arguable difference is the size associated with both. Also, really, everything is made of stone and rock? You say this while you are showing Deku seeds that aren't rocks, they're seeds. That's strike 2 for showing footage that contradicts your points you're making. And let's be honest, if everything was made of rocks, the Goron's kingdom would be way bigger than it is.
It goes without saying that a Nintendo 64 game might not have the most well-enduring graphics, but there's something about places like Dodongo's Cavern, Gerudo Valley, and even Kakariko Village, for all its charming music, that just has a visual disappeal. Is that a word? Disappeal? Unappeal? Anti-appeal?
I'm also curious to know what that means as well, but I'm not getting anything from dictionary.com, urban or otherwise, so I really can't say anything against it, so I guess I'll just move on.
That's actually what it says. I didn't add that. He just left that in.
Very professional, dude. These are the guys who are going to make a case for the opposite side of the conversation. This is as good as the opposition gets, ladies and gentlemen.
So now that we've crushed your fond childhood memories of frolicking around Hyrule's big lawn with your glassy-eyed horse,
You didn't spoil anything for me. I'm still enjoying the game like I did back in the day, regardless of your video, because I know how reductive you're being.
let's talk about story for what little lies there. For the most part, it's about as standard as a lot of series entries have been. Bad man do bad thing. You destined to stop bad man. Attractive woman help but usually capture. Good guy collect jewelry, friends, musical instruments, collectible McDonald's toys. Good guy save day. Day is save. Winner is you.
And once again, still being very reductive, but alright.
Given that it's such a standard for the series as a whole, this in itself is acceptable, although we'd always be open to seeing things get changed up in the future. The problems with Ocarina's story, really, are in the details. So you've culturally appropriated the 3 sacred stones from their homelands.
Okay, wait, no. You don't appropriate anything. You are rewarded for your efforts in saving Princess Ruto, defeating Dodongo, and ridding the Great Deku Tree of its curse. These stones will help you stop Ganon in the future because they open the sacred door to the Temple of Time.
And stuck them in a weird drab church.
It's just a weird church. This place is literally the bridge between realms. This place leads to the sacred realm where the Triforce pieces manifest themselves. But no, it's just a drab old church, guys. Why must you be so reductive? Is this a bait? Am I being baited right now?
A door opens and you step inside. You stick your large, menacingly blue sword of certain doom and justice into the pedestal you find there, and voila, you just hit puberty, kid.
That's strike 3, and you're out. This is why you check your scripts before you release your videos, guys. You just talked about how you stick your sword in the pedestal, even though you showed in your footage that you just took it out.
You've got a kingdom needs saving after 7 years of Ganondorf's cruel and unforgiving reign of terror. Except, wait a minute, why did any of this happen? In Ocarina of Time, Link awakens to be informed that he's been asleep for 7 years. He and the player are told that the 3 golden goddesses sealed him away so he could grow old enough to be able to take on Ganondorf, unable to do so in his 10-year-old knobbly-kneed body. In what possible world was letting the world go all to hell for 7 years the best possible option?
Aren't you forgetting a very important detail? Like, I don't know, the fact that Ganondorf snuck into the Sacred Realm while Link opened the door by removing the Sword of Evil's Bane. He snuck in and grabbed the full Triforce. As a failsafe, the other 2 pieces scattered, only to reveal themselves at the appropriate time when all 3 are in the same place at once. If the goddesses stayed and fought, that would risk Ganon getting the other 2 Triforce pieces. The Triforce of Power grants the wielder unlimited strength and magical power. In those circumstances, he could most likely beat both the goddesses and take the other pieces, making him literally an omnipotent god. So given that, as hard as a decision it was to make to let the world suffer bit by bit over 7 years while appointing sages, granting them some powers so they can stay back and protect the world rather than everybody dying, it seems like a very reasonable sacrifice that had to be made. This was their one shot, and if they fought Ganon and lost, they would have lost everything.
Din, Nehru, and Furore have real and undeniable power, a fact which we know from early on in the game and which is repeated in various ways across the series as a whole. If they have the power to freeze Link in a temple for over half a decade, was there no way they could have simply kept Ganondorf from getting the Triforce of Power, or for that matter, kept him from rising to power at all?
They did do that. Ganon couldn't even enter the Sacred Realm without help. That was the point of the Sacred Realm. Ganon couldn't enter unless Link opened the door to equip himself. Because of Zelda's childhood naivete, she inadvertently caused lots of death and destruction. They could only atone for what happened if they sealed Ganon away in the future and went back in time to before all this started.
Couldn't they have given the elusive but supposedly present King of Hyrule a vision or spoken to him directly? Anything to even the playing field.
Zelda was the one who had the prolific dream because she is chosen, and wisdom alone can't beat power. They needed courage as well.
It makes sense that each character destined to receive a piece of the Triforce would be given room to exercise their power, but is that balance of power worth the number of lives taken by 7 years of Ganondorf running around and fucking everything up?
I would say so, because in the end, everything turned out alright. Nobody got hurt and nobody got killed. All the destruction that was caused in the future was undone, and Ganon was sealed away forever. Plus, you also assume that there is a balance to begin with, as if they cancel each other out like some celestial rock, paper, and scissors game. They don't. It takes courage and wisdom to even come close to beating power, and even that couldn't kill Ganon. In Ocarina of Time, we had to seal him away in the Sacred Realm while he was weakened by the Sword of Evil's Bane.
This also brings up a problem with the Triforce itself, and more specifically the way in which a trio of golden slices has been handled over the years. That is to say that the things are downright vague. The Triforce of Power gives, obviously, power to its wielder, hence Ganondorf get Triforce, Ganondorf get real big, real mean, real bad. Princess Zelda uses a Triforce of Wisdom to disguise herself as Sheik, who, by the way, is a gargantuanly less interesting character than people give credit for. We see her do something similar in Wind Waker, where the reassembling of the Triforce of Wisdom transforms her into a version of herself wearing full regalia, and conveniently whitewashed.
Zelda isn't whitewashed in Wind Waker. Zelda is white. The reason why she gets lighter after she gets the Triforce of Wisdom is because the Triforce of Wisdom is the healing Triforce. As I said before, each Triforce physically manifests themselves on the wielder of that particular Triforce. The only reason Zelda is dark-skinned before she gets the Triforce is because she is a pirate and she is constantly working in the sun. The sun is damaging her skin. And what does the healing Triforce do to damage? It heals it.
In A Link Between Worlds, after using the Triforce of Power to get stronger, the additional intake of the Triforce Wisdom makes Ganondorf more stronger? Then we get to the Triforce of Courage, a symbol whose exact benefits upon Link are, well, foggy at best. The idea seems to be that it just helps Link do the things he's already doing and has been doing for quite some time by now. The whole concept of the Triforce really boils down to, here are 3 powerful magic things that can do basically whatever the plot requires. A boring trend that needs to stop, and which mostly got started right here.
Okay, let me see if I got this straight. You are asking the creators of the Zelda universe to somehow quantify the power of the creator goddesses? Okay, I need to ask, why is it an issue that the power of the Triforce is ambiguous? You only say it's bad because you think it's boring, which we already covered why that isn't an argument. The Triforce of Wisdom allows Zelda to have the power to heal others and use light as a weapon against evil. The Triforce of Courage gives Link the courage to face the true personification of evil. Remember the waves of darkness that made Navi unable to get close to Ganon? Because you hold the Triforce of Courage, you're able to stand your ground against him and his limitless power. These Triforce amplify the characteristics of the wielder. Ganon has ambitions of dominance and power over Hyrule. Zelda is wise even at a young age. And Link is courage personified. Like I said, most people aren't adventurers like you. Most people in Hyrule don't know how to fight monsters, and those who do generally become part of the Royal Guard. Think about it, when Ganondorf was chasing Impa and Zelda on horseback, Ganondorf stopped to fuck with Link. Despite him being a towering, menacing figure, and Link being completely unprepared as a child, equipped with a few toys, a shield, and a dagger, he still stood his ground and faced Ganondorf, evil personified, like an absolute Chad. Wisdom, courage, and power. The target audience at the time was predominantly children, despite the rated E for everybody rating, and I understood the concept perfectly when I was a child. So why are you having so much trouble understanding it as an adult?
To close, let's say this. Complaints about its giant empty field aside, the big issues with Ocarina of Time have a lot less to do with substance and everything to do with style. For all the good that can be said about the game, the biggest problem I found again and again was that the Hyrule it presented just didn't feel unified. Every race and community had its own little segmented pocket in the world, and it just doesn't feel like a whole. Hyrule doesn't feel like a kingdom in Ocarina. It feels like a series of segmented, mostly unrelated little city-states, caught up in the politics of the one that was able to build the tallest towers.
The King of Hyrule respects the sovereignty of the surrounding territories while providing minimal protection to the most dangerous areas. Trying to unify the other zones would do more harm than good because of the different races' biology. The races need what their environments provide in order to survive. Zoras need fish, Gorons need rocks, Kokiri need bugs and plants, and Gerudos need men not to exist. Kokiri don't even allow adults in their village. Dry environments aren't good for Zoras, and wet environments aren't good for Gorons. It's really that simple.
At the end of the day, I beat it, of course, but I didn't feel like I had accomplished very much, because to me, Hyrule still consisted of a single very tall building and a decent patch of grassland. Is Ocarina of Time an important game to the history of the medium? Absolutely. Is it fun to explore? Not nearly as much as the seas of Wind Waker, the packed world of Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, or even the warped world of Twilight Princess.
You still have yet to qualify exactly what is not fun about this game. I found it very fun when I was a child, and I still find it very fun to play to this very day when making this response video to you. So, checkmate.
But guys, Egoraptor did a video on this first! There, I said it. Now you don't have to, okay?
Yeah, too bad I already talked about Egoraptor's video.
Oh, and Ocarina of Time isn't as good as some of the later games, and that's my professional opinion. Except it's not really, because I like Ocarina of Time a little bit more than Jay, but, you know, that's the show. Okay, bye. Oof. Thanks for watching this episode of Second Opinion.
And we finally made it to the end of the video, guys. Oh boy, this was horrible. Almost Acerthorn level. Okay, it's time for my final thoughts segment. Earlier you mentioned Egoraptor's video, so let's talk about that. You know, despite being made 7 years ago, Egoraptor's video still holds up. I can respect that video because it was well made, well researched, and as entertaining as it was informative. It doesn't go out of its way to misrepresent Ocarina of Time and reduce it to its most superficial elements, which is more than I can say about your video. Even though I disagree with some of Egoraptor's points, I can still respect his video and his point of view. If I could describe your video in a single word, the word I would use is contrarian, which seems to be the point of your Second Opinion series. Sure, you have the right to your second opinion that The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time has failed the test of time. Unfortunately, you present that second opinion in a dishonest way and misrepresent the subject matter in order to try and convince others of your assessment, most likely banking on the audience that haven't even played the game. Because if you actually knew what you were talking about, you wouldn't be able to make these claims in earnest. So either you knew better and presented the arguments as is anyway, hoping nobody would notice or care about the massive contradictions, the misrepresentations, and ridiculous strawman arguments, or you are ignorant of the subject matter and you unknowingly misrepresented the game due to the lack of understanding and you didn't mean no harm by it. Despite what the video showed me, I am going to go with the latter. After all, you shouldn't attribute malice where ignorance is more applicable. I know that you made this video 4 years ago, but the arguments you presented were easy to counter, and they don't really hold up that well, which is ironic, seeing as that this video is accusing Ocarina of Time of failing to do. You want to talk about your professional opinion here? Okay, let's talk about it then. What's so professional about reducing a piece of media to its most bare-bones description just so you can say it's a bad thing? What's so professional about taking jabs at the world building and asking ridiculous questions that have a perfectly logical in-game explanation? What is so professional about poaching footage from another source and actively leaving in footage that directly contradicts the points you are trying to make? You didn't do it once or twice, you did it 3 times. So given all that, I would say your video is the opposite of professional. But that's just my professional opinion. And that's the end of my video, guys. Thank you guys for watching. So long, farewell, leave me the fuck alone, and take care.